Welcome to your Season 3 commentary from Boise, Idaho. This is your host, Adam Graham. In our commentary on the first two seasons, we talked a lot about behind-the-scenes stuff. I think there's probably less to talk about here. So we'll just focus on the programs. In many ways, this was a very stable season. Let George Do It, Sherlock Holmes, and yours truly, Johnny Dollar, aired Wednesday through Friday with the same actors who had appeared in Season 2. And William Gargan had been starred as Barry Craig for the first 9 months of the season. Yet this season had a lot of variety, particularly in its Tuesday lineup. But we start with the series that replaced Barry Craig in July, The Adventures of Frank Race. Frank Race was a syndicated program with a solid premise and a great opening theme, which we'll go ahead and listen to since it's pretty self-explanatory.
The war changed many things, the face of the earth and the people on it. Before the war, Frank Race worked as an attorney, but he traded his law books for the cloak and dagger of the OSS. And when it was over, his former life was over, too. Adventure had become his business. The Adventures of Frank Race.
I know that there are folks out there who just loathe all organ music. And there are some scores I don't care for. But to me, the theme to Frank Race is one of the most underrated and stirring themes that we've ever played. Now, what makes The Adventures of Frank Race so unique is that its setup allows Race to go back and forth between the sort of like insurance investigation that you would hear on something like Johnny Dollar, as well as international intrigue like you'd hear on The Man Called X. There's also a very nice heart to the show and to Race's approach to the world, and it really illustrates how World War II often reshaped worldviews and priorities.
We found no one there, but a note had been tacked to the door. A note asking any callers to go in and wait.
Very cozy. I never would have thought it. Look, what's the pitch on all this, Race?
A beautiful girl who thinks that tearing around and involving herself in madcap escapades is fun, even though it threatens to ruin her father's career.
Dames. And when they're beautiful, it makes it all the tougher.
Oh,
What?
you sound so cynical, the pair of you.
Well, hello, Stephanie.
Hey, where'd you come from?
Oh, we have a back door, too. Hello, Race.
Why didn't you tell me who you really were?
Oh, you've seen my father.
Yes, I saw him.
I couldn't resist it, Race. I was so mad about you when you were here before. I was only 16 then. Remember?
I remember a girl who could think of nothing but her country's freedom. A girl who adored her father.
I adored you too, Race. I think I could still adore you. With a little encouragement.
Maybe I ought to stroll down by the graveyard and commune with the spirits.
Not on my account, Mark.
Oh, meaning you have no such romantic inclination. Is that it, Race?
Stephanie, why do you insist on placing your father in such a bad position?
You mean because I refuse to wave the flag any longer? Maybe I suffered from war nerves, too? Maybe I want a little fun.
From what I gather, your fun gets pretty rough. Vandalism. Be quite a crowd you're traveling with.
I like them. They know how to live. All I ever really knew before I met them was how to die.
Now, as to Tuesdays, As soon as we finished Rogue's Gallery, we turned to Candy Matson. Candy Matson is such a unique series. It's not just that it's a series with a female lead, which is a bit of a rarity, but that her adventures would really fit comfortably into the sort of hard-boiled private detective school of characters like Richard Rogue and Sam Spade, which is even more rare since most of the female old-time radio detectives tended to come from situations with less violence or from things like comedy detective programs. But this is made even more rare by the fact that it was produced in San Francisco, and it had a lot of local flavor worked into it. And there were not many radio programs that came out of San Francisco. I feel comfortable in saying that Candy Matson was probably the best one, and it certainly developed a real cult following in its 2 years on the air. In many ways, the series started out as a bit of a joke, as you can kind of hear from this early opening scene.
Hello, Candy Matson.
I understand you've been hired to find out who knocked off Donna Dunham.
Abrupt and right to the point. That's my business, old man who talks like a ghost.
Take care of your health, little lady. Donna Dunham is dead. Let her stay like that.
You take care of your Q's and I'll shell my P's, understood?
Not quite. Listen to this.
Oh, goody goody. Bullets now delivered by phone. Thanks for the slug. I'll have it identified later.
Maybe you'll be identified later. Remember what I said, Candy Matson. Forget about Donna Dunham.
My name is Candy Matson. I like money, lots of it. That's why I became a private eye. And, too, you meet such interesting people. Mostly dead. But getting back to the cash angle, that's why I took on the Donna Dunham case. I knew it was full of dynamite. But a girl has to eat now and then, maintain a penthouse on Telegraph Hill, and keep the moths out of a few mink coats, doesn't she? Sure. And a shot fired into your room from across the street at 3 a.m. is just one of those occupational hazards.
However, the audiences really embraced her, and I think as audiences took her more seriously, the show did as well. Never getting over the top, but there was a sense where in later episodes she could be a bit more down to business than in the first ones.
Oh, hello, Willa. I didn't expect to see you so soon.
I hope you won't think me a nuisance, but I just had to see you.
I understand. Come in.
No, thanks. You've been to see Gordon. I just spoke with him on the phone, and he told me.
Yes, that's right.
What do you think, Miss Matson?
Very sad, Willa. How long has he been like this?
Just a week or so. He flew in from New York, and I could see the change in him right away.
How long ago did he leave for New York?
He left Hollywood for New York last month.
Was he all right then?
Oh, yes, just fine. He seemed so happy. He just finished writing the music for the new show in the East. But when he got there, the backers, as they say in show business, told him the music was no good. He said he'd return to the coast and redo it. But instead of going back to Hollywood, he came here, took that apartment on Powell Street, and he's been holed up there ever since.
Do you think being told his music was no good had anything to do with his present condition?
Oh, I'm sure of it, Miss Matson. He's always been such a sensitive person.
No, Willa. I've known several people who snapped momentarily under a terrific strain. Maybe it's not as serious as you think.
But what am I going to do?
Well, first, he needs aid, immediately. I know a Judge Conway here in town. I think he'll help you get Gordon committed to a sanitarium where he'll get the finest medical aid available.
A sanitarium? Oh, no, Miss Matson, that would kill Gordon.
It's either that or have him get progressively worse.
Given the limited number of stations it's aired on, we're probably lucky to have as many recordings of it as we do. But still, I would have loved to have heard even more episodes. And with more than 80 scripts for the series in existence, this would be a great series to have the missing episodes remade by modern actors. Up next was Christopher London. It was an interesting series. It starred Glenn Ford, and the character was created by Earl Stanley Gardner with a fascinating backstory. Christopher London was a private detective, but his cases had an international flair. In fact, one of the episodes that's in circulation was originally performed as a Man Called X episode starring Herbert Marshall. Sadly, we only have 3 episodes of the 18 or 19 that were aired. Ford cut the show short in order to keep up with his film obligations. Still, what remains is a pretty interesting series, and yet another series from the early 50s showing the popularity of programs centered around international intrigue.
I took the jewel case back to my stateroom and found that somebody had shoved a note under my door. It read, "Take off that beard, we know you." The writer had a sense of humor. But in my experience, the most dangerous enemies are those that laugh. I took a closer look at the little jewel case. It had one of those intricate Chinese locks that are easy to break, but not easy to open without the proper key. I put the box in a pillowcase and carried it to the office of the ship's doctor.
Now, what can I do for you, Mr. London?
Your laboratory is equipped with X-ray, I suppose, Doctor?
Yes, of course.
Well, I know this sounds a little strange, but I wonder if you'd take a picture of this box here, just as it is. It was exactly what I expected. I carried the box back to my stateroom, shoved it under the bunk, and went to bed. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when suddenly there was a knock on the door. I was out of bed like a shot. Just a second. Yes?
Miss Anders asked if you will come at once.
What? Oh, yes, all right. I'll be there in a minute.
Next up was the old-time radio Hercule Poirot radio series. We start off with the Campbell's Playhouse adaptation of The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, where Orson Welles plays a double role. And then we have an episode of the mystery anthology series Murder Clinic, which adapts a Poirot short story, and then we get all of the surviving episodes of the Poirot radio series starring Harold Huber. This series, like the earlier Father Brown series, moved the detective across the pond to New York. It's an intriguing series with some pretty good mysteries. I also have to note that this includes one of the most embarrassing flubs of my podcasting career, as one episode of the Poirot series is loosely based on one of his most famous novels, which I confess I had not read at the time, but have since read, adored, and it's become one of my favorite mystery novels ever. So when you listen to that episode and you wonder what happened, let's just be clear. I goof. But I find it a really enjoyable series and a really unique take on the character.
Thousand thunders, what does it cause with the lights? Well, there is always the lamp.
Oh, please, I'm not a thief. I'll go out quietly. I didn't take anything. I didn't really. Unless you count a cup of coffee. I was so hungry. I'll pay for that. Just let me get out of here, and please don't say anything about it.
Please, mademoiselle, give me a moment to think, and let me turn on the lamp and look at you.
Oh.
Oh, indeed, mademoiselle. Or should I say madame? Inasmuch as you are wearing a wedding gown?
No, it's not madame. That's why I'm here.
Mademoiselle, I am not a minister.
No, you don't understand. I didn't get married. I ran away. They chased me, so I hid in this apartment.
And how did you get in?
Well, I ran in here because I saw Peter coming around the corner. I ran into the elevator and told the boy to take me to the top floor. Then I went up on the roof. I knew Peter would come after me, and so I climbed down the fire escape, and your window was open.
That was most careless of me.
Oh, please, you're not going to have me arrested, are you? I'm not a thief, really, I'm not.
Mademoiselle, we will discuss that question in due time. Just now, there are many things I do not understand. You are in the costume of a bride. Where is the groom?
Why, that's Peter.
You mean you were running away from your future husband?
Yes. But please, that's something I don't want to talk about. May I go now?
You may go most certainly, mademoiselle, but have you given thought to where you are going? In that dress, you will most certainly attract attention, and you cannot spend the remainder of the night breaking into strange apartments.
I know, but I'm trying to get to my aunt. She'll help me.
Then you are not returning to your home?
Oh, no, I can't. Oh, hide me, please.
No, mademoiselle, that is out of the question.
Well, I'll run into the kitchen.
That is useless, mademoiselle.
But don't you see someone's after me?
That, mademoiselle, is a possibility. But hiding will not help.
Oh, please don't answer.
Next up is a series that we did because of events that occurred in the larger world. TV journalist Mike Wallace passed away in April of 2012 at the age of 93. I had been fascinated to find out that Mike Wallace had a career in radio. And it wasn't just a news career or an announcing career. He actually tried his hand at acting. And there was a series that he recorded, Crime on the Waterfront, which was an audition for a series that was never picked up by NBC. What we have of Crime on the Waterfront is kind of interesting because we have 2 audition recordings dated within a week of each other, and each was 35 minutes long. So that's a bit of an odd situation. I found it fascinating because I became aware of Wallace when he was in his 70s, and he had this reputation as this confrontational newsman, and I saw clips going back to the 70s, and I imagine that was kind of his career path. So finding these episodes was kind of like finding out that an older person who you thought you really knew a lot about actually had an entirely different life. And I never imagined that he was a radio detective, and it's just kind of an interesting novelty.
We're out of port about an hour when a steward knocks on my door, says, Captain Archer presents his compliments and would like to see me in his cabin at my very earliest convenience, which means pronto, so I go right down.
Lieutenant Kegel, I'll come straight to the point. As master of this ship, I'm directly responsible for the safety of my passengers. Well, this morning, one of them, a young lady, appealed to me for protection.
Against what?
Kidnapping.
On a ship?
Almost my exact words.
And then we have Pete Kelly's Blues. This is a series with just a terrific opening.
This one's about Pete Kelly. It's about the world he goes around in. It's about the big music and the big trouble and the big 20s. When they ask you, tell them this one's about the blues. Pete Kelly's Blues.
This was such a passion project for Jack Webb. This whole era of the Roaring Twenties and the idea of Pete Kelly would be something he would later bring to the screen and have in a TV series, which he didn't appear in. This series, in some ways, is reminiscent of Pat Novak for Hire in terms of its downbeat and some of the hard-boiled language, but I think it's a little bit more developed and a little less flippant, even though there are still some great lines. And then there's also the music. If you can appreciate some old-style jazz, Webb is sure to get in all of the jazz numbers, even if it interferes with the logic of the plot. So this was also a fun series to do.
Sorry, Pete. Running a little behind tonight.
You haven't left the station. What's the matter, Augie?
I'm nervous. Take a look around. Near the door, back this way. What's full of traps?
Well, forget it. Have Jake open a couple of windows. Take a walk. Get yourself in shape, huh?
Not till I find out which way to fall. Boys are here for heavy duty. I learned that out in the kitchen.
Now, let's duck behind the stand. All right, what about it?
You know Dutch Courtney?
I drink his beer, that's all.
Well, somebody shut Courtney up tonight out near Highway 40.
That's too bad. He'd have drawn a good crowd downtown. Who killed him?
I don't know, but whoever he is, he's in for a big night. The police are trying for him. So's his partner.
Well, let him play. How does our place fit into it?
I couldn't guess, but we'll find out soon. See the big guy that just walked in the door?
Yeah, boss cop?
Almost. It's Eddie Newman, Dutch Courtney's partner.
Come on, we better get back on the stand.
Kelly.
Yeah.
My name's Newman. Come outside.
Well, we're due to play.
I'll hear you later. Come on. You hear about Dutch Courtney? Picked him out of the mud tonight.
Means nothing to me.
Does to me. Dutch was a friend.
Well, if it'll help, cry.
I'm short on time, Kelly. Now, give me a rundown on Gus Trudeau.
There's nothing to say. He played for a while and he went to the boneyard.
You know him? You know his sister?
You'll have to ask Courtney about that. I haven't seen her since the old days.
You knew Gus well enough to figure he didn't like Dutch Courtney. He didn't like him 1 pound.
Well, you can't blame him. Dutch sidestepped and paid Trudeau's way to jail.
Bookkeeping. I don't know anything about it.
All right, look, Newman, you're on the wrong track. This is a job killing. Your boy got frisky and somebody sent down a Chicago gun. The price tag shows.
Sorry, Trudeau's my pick.
What did he hit him with? A high-powered rifle? Gus Trudeau's away up in Leavenworth.
He used to be. Gus went over the wall this morning. When he shows up, I want him.
Well, why pick me?
Now, ask around. He'll head for you. He's broke. He'll need train fare.
No, not if he killed Dutch Courtney. Somebody will give him a railroad.
One thing I like with Tuesdays is to have a little bit of a tonal shift sometimes, because we feature some of the rare programs of all sorts, and to me, the idea of following something as hard-boiled as Pete Kelly's Blues with something as light as The Adventures of Leondias Witherall. This is a series that focused on a boys' school schoolmaster who just happens to look like William Shakespeare. The series stars Walter Hamden, who was just a New York acting legend. I listened to some of his other radio performances, and radio really has blessed the world by leaving us a recording of Mr. Hamden's work, which outside of radio was mostly on the stage. Here, the series, except for maybe one episode which kind of got melodramatic, it's a lighthearted and fun series, which still manages to produce some serious mysteries.
Here's my jar, Mr. Witherall.
And mine. There's about 24 others already in the booth. I'll steer the crowd over. You get up on the platform, Mr. Witherall.
See you later, Shakespeare, and thank you for taking my place.
See you later. By the way, here's our entry, Mr. Witherall. We should walk away with a contest. My fiancée made these. Connie Maple Grove.
Oh, all right, Randy. Let me first hop up on this platform. There we are.
Quiet, everybody. Quiet, everybody. Quiet, please. Thank you. Here's a clean spoon, Mr. Witherall. You can start any time now.
Start clean, eh? All right, Mr. Bradley. Here goes.
What's wrong back there? The back of his wild bull! He broke out of his pen. He's heading this way.
Come on down off that platform, Mr. Witherall. Why, the bull's liable to pick you out.
Me? Pick me out, oh, you flatter me.
Well, there he comes. Get out of the way, everybody.
Stand back, everybody. Don't push. Don't get near him, anybody. He's my bull. He's my bull. I know him. He'll claw you to death. Dalton, boy. Go back to your pen. Go back.
Why, that bull's running around like he's crazy.
That crowd pushing so much, I can hardly stand up.
Look out, Randy. You'll knock over that jar of preserves.
Oh,
gosh. Your coat. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it, Mr. Witherall. Now you've got that jelly all over your coat.
Well, of all things to happen, spilling preserves all over his coat.
Don't move, everybody. Hey, if you start to run, that bull of mine will kill you.
Come down off that platform, Mr. Witherall. The bull's looking at you.
At me?
Well, yes. Don't move now. Don't budge an inch.
That bull's too close for comfort.
Don't run, Witherall. He'll go after you.
Get out of my way, everybody.
Everybody get a gun. Let's shoot him. Hey, don't you dare shoot my my bull.
But he'll ride those horns right into Mr. Witherall. Oh, don't run. Oh, good heavens.
Then we come to The Fat Man. And this was such a unique series. It starred J. Scott Smart as this overweight detective. It had an absolutely iconic opening. Anyone who grew up listening to the series and is still alive could tell you about it.
There he goes, into that drugstore. He's stepping on the scale. Weight, 237 pounds. Fortune, danger. Who is it?
The Fat Man.
The writing is really good, and Smart is really interesting in what would be his only major detective role. Mostly he was known for his comedic work, generally with Fred Allen. But given a chance to play a private detective, he creates a really interesting character. At this point, I did not play the Australian version of The Fat Man, though I would about a decade later as we were running out of programs. I think the Australian version of The Fat Man is still a pretty good series with the strength of the original scripts, but I definitely miss J. Scott Smart. And this was such an iconic program, and it really is a shame that only 10 episodes of it exist.
2 hours later, I was in Lieutenant Mackenzie's office at headquarters. The dawn was just about breaking, and I listened to Mac's autopsy report as I sipped a welcome container of steaming coffee.
Charlie Haney was poisoned, Brad. Stuff was slipped into a drink.
What about the blood on his mouth?
Poison they used was dynamite. Brought on a hemorrhage.
The guy in Andy's cab got his walking papers in the exact same way.
I don't know. I'm inclined to think that Charlie Haney and the guy in Maroney's hack were one and the same.
Why? Because the initials in the hat?
That's one reason. And Maroney admitted the back of his cab was dark when he looked at his passenger.
He's scared, Mac. He'll admit almost anything if he thought he'd save you a little trouble. Now, personally, I think we're dealing with two different killings. And both the victims have the same initials.
Then what happened to corpse number one?
Well, it's a cinch he didn't walk to a funeral partner to get himself registered.
Well, I questioned the girl, the musician, and Mrs. Rogers.
You got any dope?
Not much. Charlie Haney was a jack of all trades around the Venetian blind. Did odd jobs for Mrs. Rogers. Sometimes he'd throw out an obstreperous customer.
A bouncer, huh?
He was big enough.
Yeah, I'd say he was.
Well, in any case, I had nothing on him, so I let him loose. I might have held Mrs. Rogers on suspicion, but her battery of lawyers would have sprung her anyway.
What about Andy Maroney?
Well, he's in the clear so far. I'm letting him go back to his cab, but I'm padlocking the Venetian blind while the investigation goes on.
If you don't mind my saying so, Mac, that isn't a very smart move.
No? Why?
I think you'd be better off to keep the club open and give the killer a chance to show up again.
Look, Brad, I'm going to ask you for a favor.
Okay, shoot.
Lay off this case.
Why?
Well, first of all, your client's in the clear, so that's taken care of.
And secondly?
I won't buy your theory about two victims. And it's the kind of a thing that might confuse the investigation.
Sensitive, Max?
Now, you know better than that. I'm just saying that your guesswork is cockeyed. And I'm going to have enough trouble solving the murder of one victim without searching for an imaginary corpse.
Well, Let George Do It continued to feature Bob Bailey, and no real change there, although I think there may have been a slight decline in script quality as the series went on towards the end of season 3. John Stanley continued as Sherlock Holmes, and as I promised on the last commentary, I'll talk a little bit about John Lund's run as yours truly, Johnny Dollar. I think my reaction to Lund was honestly surprised. When I was doing my research for the series, I found that there were no fans who really considered Lund their favorite Johnny Dollar. The same could not be said for Mandel Kramer or Edmund O'Brien. And so I was expecting something that was kind of weak and mediocre. I actually was surprised that it was pretty good, all things considered. I will admit that the Lund era was marred a little bit by some fans who were just absolutely eager for me to get to Bob Bailey. So the year and a half we were working through the Lund episodes was not unlike taking a year and a half car trip with people screaming, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" But aside, this was pretty good. I think that while Lund is, still not many people's favorite Johnny Dollar actor, he has gained respect over the years, as since the time we went through his run for the first time, 6 more episodes have come into circulation. In addition, the San Antonio Matter, which was probably his best story, was only available as a weak-sounding rehearsal, but since a network broadcast in good condition has come into circulation, which highlights how strong a story that was, how good his performance was, and just maybe improve people's appreciation of him a little bit more. But here you'll get to hear the original, somewhat more scratchy take on that matter, as well as the rest of Mr. Lund's performances.
Yes?
My name is Dollar. Is Mr. McGregor in?
No.
Well, do you expect him soon?
Well, if he's not here by this time, I can figure he won't be home at all. Can I help you? I'm Mrs. McGregor.
Well, I don't...
They're working him awfully hard at the plant these days. He's been staying there nights a lot recently.
Oh? Maybe I can talk to you.
Won't you come in? I'm so glad for the company, Mr. Dollar. With Mr. McGregor away so much, I tell you, I just pine for someone to talk to. Can I fix you a cup of coffee?
No, thanks. Nice place you have here.
Thank you. We like it. The company's been very good to Ken. He's been with them a long time, you know.
I guess he must like his work.
Oh, he loves it. They wanted him to retire several times, but not Ken. Offered him a pension, too. But I guess they realize he knows more about cars than anyone in the whole world, I do believe.
He seems to work hard, staying away so late, missing dinner.
Oh, he wasn't always like that. He works hard, but he's also a family man, do you know what I mean? But lately, he's had so much on his mind. The way I see it, he wants to make one more showing before he does quit.
Yes, I see what you mean. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go.
Oh, do you have to? I was enjoying our talk so much.
So was I. Oh, Mrs. McGregor, I wonder if I could ask something of you.
Of course.
Don't tell Mr. McGregor about this visit. I mean, it's nothing to worry about, but...
I understand, young man. In years past, before they pushed him aside, lots of you boys used to come out and see us. I won't say a word.
Thanks a lot. Good night.
Good night.
And there it was. A man who'd given a lifetime of loyalty. And now he was drinking on the job, staying at the shop all night, hating the new model car. I wondered how I'd feel if I suddenly found myself outdated. Outdated by a kid full of new, fresh, crazy ideas. Then I remembered that a man named Steve Johnson had died, that they'd had 4 crack-ups and might have others.
Now on to our specials, and for the first time in this season, we had specials aside from the normal specials every 50 episodes. These were in honor of the passing of Norman Corwin and Ray Bradbury, respectively. Corwin, we did a special on episode 525, Murder in Studio One, which was a comedy farce.
Yeah, well, let's get down to business. What's that paper sticking out of Van Crim's side pocket?
It's got typing on it.
Looks like a commercial announcement.
Well, let me see it, please. Don't forget to remember to insist on the name Fudgy Cream.
For a real, honest-to-goodness, creamy, delicious, wholesome, tempting, tangy, healthful, different app, mellow, rich, lusciously nourished, and crunchy.
He was supposed to read that tonight at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, well, he's better off this way. Now, Dr. Bumbridge, you've been poking around there long enough. You determined the cause of death?
Oddly enough, the victim was not killed violently. Very strange.
Yeah, it is strange.
The evidence points to strangulation, but there isn't a mark of any kind to indicate the manner of strangulation.
Let me make a note of that. Okay, dog. I take it, Doctor. You completed your examination?
Except for an autopsy.
You're then through for the present?
Yes, ma'am.
But you haven't used your stethoscope to examine the corpse, Dr. Bumbridge. Why is that?
Surely, Miss Klopp, you're joking.
Make a note of that, Minnie. I am not joking, Doctor.
But you know that the coroner never examines stethoscopically. When I arrive, it is not to examine a patient, but a corpse.
Don't hand me platitudes at a time like this, sir. Once again, may I suggest you use your stethoscope?
This is preposterous.
Specifically in the area of the duodenum.
Absolute nonsense. The man is dead.
Why'd you do as you told, you jerk? Just leave this to me, Minnie. I'll take care of the smart repartee. You stick to your shorthand.
Okay, dog. Just trying to help.
And besides, it's jerk, not joik.
Very well. If it will humor you any, Miss Klopp, I will listen to his pulse and respiration, which ceased at least 2 hours ago.
I only yesterday, Van Print told me he was going to do the commercial for Miracle Beer. He says to me, let me tell you...
Well, Dr. Bumbridge, what do you hear?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No, nothing.
Yeah, well, then why are you so pale?
I am not well, I guess.
Yeah, give me that stethoscope. I'll listen myself.
For Bradbury, we did a special for episode 690 and played the suspense episode, The Crowd, which, to be honest, is kind of a hard story to translate to audio. I think they did the best they could, but still, it has some rough spots. For both authors, I really wish that I had been doing The Amazing World of Radio and doing the sort of tribute series that I've done in more recent years for the passing of such figures as Kirk Douglas and Olivia de Havilland. While I think both stories were fine, they hardly represented the writers at their best, particularly Corwin, who was known as radio's poet laureate, and wrote so many beautiful plays during the golden age of radio, and later started doing stage plays after radio began its decline. Still, I did get to work with more Corwin stories when we did The War during 2013 and 2014. For our 550th and 650th episodes, we featured two forgotten but still really interesting sleuths. Playing through Candy Matson, I thought it would be a great idea to go ahead and feature another female detective in Madame Rosica's story. And one of her adventures is told in the mystery anthology series Murder Clinic, A Scrap of Lace. Then for our 650th episode special, we featured a radio adaptation of Anthony Boucher's sleuth Nick Noble in the Screwball Division. For our 600th episode special, we did our first adaptation of the classic story, The 39 Steps, from Studio One, as it featured Glenn Ford, who was starring as Christopher London. Our 700th episode special was my favorite one of the season, and that's the Lux Radio Theater adaptation of Captain Carey USA. It did not feature the Oscar-winning song from that movie, Mona Lisa, nor did it feature the star of the film, Alan Ladd. However, it featured Ladd's substitute, a man who did very little radio, Charlton Heston, who takes over the role in this story of quest for truth, justice, and revenge after World War II.
Come along, Webb. Father's waiting for us.
Please, Nancy, it's that painting. I've seen that before.
Really? I had a long talk last night with Father. I told him that I was in love with you and you weren't. He said he felt the same way about Mother after he came back from his war. And what you need is a job.
Oh, Nancy, I want to speak to someone about that painting.
Oh, very well, dear. Let's go in.
Yes, sir?
About that painting in the window, the Palazzo de Cressy.
Ah, I see you know Italian history.
The more recent Italian history.
Oh, we've been very fortunate. The Italian government doesn't usually allow treasures like this to leave the country.
Oh, it's lovely, isn't it?
An outstanding work by Bellini, madame. In Bellini's time, the de Cresces were the ruling family in northern Italy. Last week, we refused an offer of $30,000 from a museum.
$30,000?
Where did you get this painting?
Through our agent, sir, in Switzerland.
Where did they get it?
Forgive me, but are you an accredited art dealer?
No.
Well, then I'm sorry, sir. I'm unable to give you any further information.
Webb, I don't understand. Why are you so interested?
Because 2 people died, a man and a girl, and I spent 3 years in a hospital, and because you won't have to worry about me getting a job. I've got one now, in Italy.
What kind of a job?
Finding the man who sold this painting.
But why?
Because I'm going to kill him.
Now, I did actually see the movie version, and for my money, I actually prefer Heston's take to Alan Ladd. And that's nothing against Alan Ladd. I'm a huge fan of his. But Heston absolutely nails this role. And it's just a shame that there wasn't more radio in his life. It just kind of came down to his age, when he started his career, when he came to Hollywood, and the fact that the industry was already in decline. Captain Carey USA and the other scattered work he did in other genres shows how great he would have been had he had more opportunity to work on radio. Our 750th episode special wasn't actually a traditional special. Rather, it was another episode of Pete Kelly's Blues that a listener pointed me to after I went through the podcast. It's a different version of a story that we did have, but with different actors and some different musical selections, so it's a good variant to be able to listen to. However, our final special of the season was yet another episode that wasn't a normal 50th episode special, and that was our commemoration of 50 years since the date of September 30th, 1962, traditionally marked as the end of the golden age of radio. We replayed both programs that aired on that date, an episode of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar, which starred Mandel Kramer, and then an episode of Suspense. The Suspense episode isn't the type of thing that we would normally play, but as part of honoring the last 2 episodes in the golden age of radio, we went ahead and did it, and I think it makes for an interesting special. And I hope you enjoy that special and everything else we have for you in Season 3.